From my perspective as a newly elected member, I'd like to offer observations on three elements of how this House operates to contribute and feed into the deliberations of the committee. I'd like to speak about sitting, speaking and voting. Very kind of day-to-day activities that we have, despite only spending 3 weeks in this House already. These are observations that I know I share with others across all parts of the House, having had some conversations in the corridors about them. So, first of all, sitting. We are in a chamber that is far too small for all of us to fit into. I know this is not a novel observation, but as a newly elected MP, it is really, really striking that this is quite extraordinary. I've served as a councillor for a number of years. I've served as a member of the European Parliament. In each of those chambers, you would have your own seat, you'd have your own desk, you'd be able to plug in your devices so that you could work off electronic materials. It seems really quite extraordinary that we do not have space in this chamber for each of us to sit and to speak. And indeed, I've been amazed to discover that there are seats in this chamber in which we can sit, but from which we cannot speak, which seems really quite extraordinary limitation on the ability of everybody to participate in our debates. So wouldn't that be wonderful if we all had somewhere to sit? The limitations on space also leads to some frankly rather ridiculous behaviour, such as the practice of having to queue up at the opening of the chamber to place a prayer card to book your seat, and at times of great demand, such as the King's speech or indeed PMQs, leads to this kind of contestation over space that simply wouldn't have to be there if we had enough space for everybody. And while I'm on the topic of prayers, there is a practice in this place of Christian prayers. As the daughter of preachers, I am very familiar with this, but I would beg to suggest that perhaps in this day and age in which we are a country of all faiths and none, it might be time to consider taking an approach perhaps a little bit more like Radio 4's Thought for the Day, where a range of faiths are represented and there is an opportunity in that moment of reflection at the beginning of the day to hear views from a range of different faith perspectives and indeed from none. So to move on to speaking, I'm actually glad that there has been a time limit introduced for speeches today, because again, I'm used to speaking in chambers in which there is a time limit, and I think time limits aid the democratic process because they mean that everybody gets an equal chance at a fair crack of the whip at having their voice heard within the chamber. If we had more time limits, there would be more opportunity for people to participate, and perhaps MPs would be more keen to participate in debates here. But it's not just the time limit, it's the process of getting a slot. I have been busy bobbing up and down to attract your attention, Madam Deputy Speaker, as indeed I did last week for 5 solid hours without managing to attract the attention of the Speaker. And there have been a number of people in recent days who wanted to make their maiden speeches and not been able to do so. This practice of bobbing, while it might be good for the glutes, I suggest is not so good for democracy, and perhaps we could find a more efficient way of allocating speaking time. While we're on the topic of allocating time, the honourable member from the Lib Dems spoke about, the process for government control or non-government control of speaking time. Again, that is an initiative to increase the backbench influence on the allocation of speaking time. I think that would be very, very useful. And my final point on speaking is on the culture in this House. I've witnessed everything from excessive deference to, frankly, braying in the few short days that I have spent in this chamber. And I think that, as others have made reference to in their maiden speeches, we really need to clean up politics. We really need to show that we are all here to debate in as positive a spirit as possible, as indeed the member for Cardiff West just referred to. Finally, voting. It's extraordinary to me that we do not have electronic voting. We have a semi-system. While I've been here, I've participated in 5 votes, and that's taken at least an hour and a quarter. If you added up each of those votes, it adds up to basically a month's worth of MP time. It is an utter waste of time, totally unproductive. We could be getting through far more. So let's get rid of the voting lobbies. We could double the physical size of the chamber if we got rid of the voting lobbies. That's a genuine practical suggestion. And take the opportunity of the decanting process and the newbie MPs to really modernise how we operate here. And my final point, if we want to be a truly modern House of Commons, proportional representation.